Orphans don't wear white, that's for real family, she announced to the entire bridal shop. My fiancé looked away. I smiled. Okay. The next morning, her husband opened his email. Your firm has been removed from the merger. Signed, me. The orphan. The champagne flute felt cold against my palm as I stood in the bridal boutique, surrounded by mirrors that reflected endless versions of myself in a gorgeous ivory gown. 20 minutes earlier, I'd been floating on air. Now, I watched my reflection smile, freeze, and crack like thin ice. Orphans don't wear white, Lauren said, her voice cutting through the soft music and polite murmurs. That's for real family. She stood near the velvet ottoman, one hand resting on her pregnant belly, the other clutching her designer purse. My fiancé Daniel's sister had arrived uninvited to my dress appointment, bringing her husband Gregory and an arsenal of opinions nobody requested. The boutique fell silent. Even the consultant, a kind woman named Patricia who'd spent the last hour helping me find the perfect dress, stood motionless with a pincushion in her hand. I turned slowly, the layers of tulle whispering around my legs. Excuse me? Lauren's eyes swept over me with practiced disdain. You heard me. White is traditionally for brides from intact families. Women with parents to walk them down the aisle. You're essentially playing dress up in someone else's tradition. Daniel shifted uncomfortably near the entrance, suddenly fascinated by his phone screen. We'd been together for 3 years. He knew my story. My parents died in a car accident when I was 7, and I'd grown up in foster care, bouncing between 5 different homes before aging out of the system at 18. I put myself through community college, then state university, working nights and weekends. I built my marketing career from nothing, clawing my way up until I landed at Morrison Digital, a mid-sized firm with big clients and bigger ambitions. Lauren, I said quietly, this is my appointment. And you're marrying into our family, she countered, stepping closer. Her heels clicked against the hardwood floor. Which means your choices reflect on us. Grandmother is already uncomfortable with Daniel marrying someone without background. Do you really need to parade around in virginal white when everyone knows you don't have a father to give you away? Gregory stood behind his wife, arms crossed, nodding along like a dashboard ornament. He worked at Brennan & Associates, a prestigious consulting firm that specialized in corporate mergers. I knew this because Lauren mentioned it approximately every 15 minutes. I also knew this because his firm had been part of the merger discussions I'd been handling, though Lauren had no idea about my role in that process. Patricia cleared her throat. Perhaps we should. I'm just being honest, Lauren interrupted, addressing the small audience of boutique staff and other customers who'd stopped to witness the spectacle. Nobody else will tell her the truth. It's embarrassing. She should choose something more appropriate. Maybe champagne or blush. Something that doesn't scream I'm pretending to have a normal family. The champagne flute was still in my hand. I set it down carefully on the nearest table, taking a moment to study the bubbles rising through the golden liquid. My phone buzzed in my purse. I ignored it. You know what the worst part is? Lauren continued, warming to her subject. Daniel's too nice to say anything. He just lets her plan this whole charade. A big white wedding for someone who grew up in the system. It's almost tragic. Daniel finally looked up from his phone. Lauren, come on. Come on what? I'm trying to help her avoid humiliation. Imagine the wedding photos. Everyone asking, where are the bride's parents? What's she going to say? They died decades ago and I got shuffled through foster homes like unwanted furniture? Something inside me settled into perfect stillness. I looked at Daniel, really looked at him. His face was flushed, but he wasn't defending me. He was embarrassed, of the situation, of his sister's volume, maybe of me. His eyes met mine for half a second before darting away again. That was the moment I understood everything with crystalline clarity. You're right, I said. Lauren blinked. What? You're absolutely right. I reached behind me, finding the zipper. Patricia, could you help me out of this dress? Patricia moved forward immediately, relief evident in her expression. Of course. Lauren looked momentarily thrown, as if she'd expected an argument. Well. Good. I'm glad you're being reasonable about this. I smiled at her. It was the kind of smile I'd learned in my 3rd foster home, the one run by Mrs. Patterson who taught me that showing pain was the same as losing. I'm always reasonable, Lauren. Thank you for your honesty. 15 minutes later, I was back in my street clothes. Daniel tried to catch my arm as I headed for the exit. Babe, I'm sorry. Lauren gets intense sometimes. She means well, does she? I pulled my arm free gently. I need some air. I'll call you later. I walked out into the afternoon sunlight, got into my car, and drove. Not home. Not to Daniel's apartment. Just drove, letting muscle memory guide me through familiar streets while my mind raced ahead. My phone buzzed again. This time I checked it. The message was from Christopher Wells, CEO of Morrison Digital. Merger confirmed. Papers signed this morning. Brennan and Associates officially joins Morrison Digital as of next month. You're the lead on integration. Congratulations. I pulled into a coffee shop parking lot and read the message 3 times. 6 months ago, Morrison Digital had begun quietly acquiring smaller consulting firms, building toward a major expansion. I'd been instrumental in the strategy, working late nights to identify targets and structure deals. Brennan and Associates had been my suggestion, a respected firm with strong client relationships but aging leadership ready to cash out. I'd spent weeks in negotiations, working directly with senior partners at Brennan. The deal was massive, complex, and valuable. Once completed, Morrison Digital would double in size, and I'd been promised a VP position overseeing the integration. Gregory worked at Brennan and Associates. Not as a partner, he was middle management, barely significant in the firm's hierarchy. But he was there. He'd benefit from the merger, probably get promoted in the shuffle. I opened my laptop and pulled up the merger documentation. My fingers moved across the keyboard with steady precision, years of foster care survival instinct kicking into high gear. I'd learned early that the world was divided into those who acted and those who got acted upon. The integration plan included detailed assessments of Brennan's personnel. Every employee had been evaluated for their role in the merged company. Gregory's file sat in a subfolder, marked for retention pending final review. I made some calls. First to Christopher. I need to discuss a personnel concern regarding the Brennan acquisition. Go ahead. I've been reviewing employee files, and I've identified a potential conflict of interest. Gregory Hayes, currently a senior associate at Brennan, has family connections that could complicate his position in the merged entity. Explain. I did, keeping my voice professional, laying out how Gregory's wife was related to someone in my personal life, how this created potential complications for team dynamics, how his performance reviews were actually mediocre when examined closely. I didn't lie. I simply emphasized certain truths while letting others fade into the background. Christopher listened. Your recommendation? Include him in the redundancy package. It's cleaner. There was a pause. You're sure about this? Completely sure. Done. Send me the updated documentation. Next, I called my attorney, Marcus Chen, someone I kept on retainer since my first real paycheck. Growing up in the system taught me the value of having a good lawyer. Marcus, I need you to review my prenuptial agreement draft. I didn't know you had one prepared. I don't yet. That's why I need you to draft it. Comprehensive protection of all assets, including intellectual property, business interests, and future earnings. I want it airtight. Planning to have your fiancé sign this? Eventually. Right now, I'm planning to not need it. Marcus was quiet for a moment. What happened? Let's just say I'm reevaluating some relationships. Understood. I'll have something by tomorrow. I made a third call, this one to my closest friend, Natalie, who worked in PR. I need advice on handling a delicate personal situation that might become public. Natalie had known me since college, back when I was working 3 jobs and surviving on vending machine dinners. Tell me everything. I did. When I finished, Natalie let out a low whistle. What are you going to do? I'm going to be very, very reasonable. That's what worries me. I spent that evening in my apartment, which I deliberately kept in my name alone despite Daniel's hints about moving in together. The space was modest but mine, every piece of furniture purchased with money I'd earned, every book on the shelf chosen by me, every plant on the windowsill kept alive through my effort. Daniel called 4 times. I let it go to voicemail. Lauren sent a text, glad you saw sense about the dress. Family dinner Sunday? I replied, we'll see. The updated merger documentation went to Christopher at midnight. By 12:30 a.m., he'd approved it. The revised personnel list would be distributed Monday morning. Sunday morning arrived with weak sunshine and the smell of rain. Daniel showed up at my door with coffee and pastries, his apologetic face firmly in place. Can we talk? I let him in. I'm really sorry about yesterday, he began, setting the coffee on my kitchen counter. Lauren was completely out of line. I should have said something. Yes, I agreed. You should have. She's going through a lot right now. The pregnancy hormones, stress with Gregory's job. Stop. Daniel stopped. I sat down on my couch, studying the man I planned to marry. He was handsome in a comfortable way, successful in his accounting career, stable. After years of instability, stable had seemed like enough. But sitting there, watching him fidget with his coffee cup, I realized stability wasn't the same as strength. Comfort wasn't the same as courage. Why didn't you defend me? I did. I told her to come on. That's not defending me, Daniel. That's asking her to lower her voice. He set the coffee down harder than necessary. What did you want me to do? Scream at my pregnant sister in the middle of a bridal shop? Make an even bigger scene? I wanted you to tell her she was wrong. I wanted you to take my hand and walk out with me. I wanted you to choose me over avoiding conflict. That's not fair. You know how complicated family dynamics are. I don't, actually. The words came out sharper than I intended. I don't know what it's like to have a sister who shows up uninvited to criticize my choices. I don't know what it's like to have parents who take sides in arguments. I figured it out alone, Daniel. Everything I know about family, I learned from the outside looking in. His face softened with something that looked like pity. That was worse than the embarrassment had been. I know you had it rough growing up. Stop. Don't do that. Don't use my background as an excuse to treat me like I'm fragile or damaged. I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking for basic respect. You have my respect. Do I? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like your respect extends right up until it makes your family uncomfortable. Then suddenly, I'm supposed to understand. Be reasonable. Not make waves. Daniel stood up, pacing to my window. You're being unfair. One incident doesn't define our entire relationship. You're right. It doesn't define it. It reveals it. I watched him, this man I'd spent 3 years building a life with, and wondered how I'd miss the signs. How many other times did you choose the path of least resistance instead of standing up for us? That's not what I do. Last Thanksgiving, when your uncle made that comment about me being self-made with air quotes, implying I was lying about my success. You laughed it off. Remember? His shoulders tensed. Or the time your mother suggested we postpone the wedding because people might talk about us not having a traditional engagement party. You told me she had a point instead of asking why we needed to care what people thought. Those were small things. They weren't small to me. Every single time, you chose their comfort over my dignity. I convinced myself it didn't matter because you were good to me in private. But Daniel, love isn't just what happens behind closed doors. It's what you do when someone tries to tear down the person you claim to love. The silence stretched between us, heavy with all the conversations we should have had months ago. Why didn't you defend me? I did. I told her to come on. That's not defending me, Daniel. That's asking her to lower her voice. He ran his hand through his hair, a nervous gesture I'd seen 1,000 times. You're right. I messed up. But you know how Lauren is. If I'd made a big scene, it would have just gotten worse. So your solution was to let her humiliate me in a room full of strangers? No. I thought if I stayed calm, she'd calm down. Did it work? Silence. I stood up. I need you to leave. What? No, come on, we can work through this. I need space to think. Please respect that. Daniel's face cycled through several emotions: confusion, frustration, fear. Are you breaking up with me? I'm asking for space. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have right now. He left. The coffee got cold on the counter. Monday morning came with gray skies and the grinding sound of garbage trucks. I dressed carefully for work: navy suit, minimal jewelry, hair pulled back. Wore paint for the corporate battlefield. Morrison Digital's office occupied 3 floors of a downtown building with glass walls and open floor plans. I arrived early, before most of the staff, and went straight to Christopher's office. He looked up from his computer. The Brennan team got their integration notifications this morning. Any issues? 1. Gregory Hayes called his contact here, trying to understand why he was being let go. Said there must be a mistake. What did you tell him? That restructuring sometimes involves difficult decisions, and we're offering a generous severance package. Thank you. Christopher leaned back in his chair, studying me. Want to tell me what really happened? Personal matter that became a professional consideration. That's what I figured. Just so you know, his work record supported your recommendation. Everything was documented and legitimate. But I've been doing this long enough to know when someone has multiple motivations. Are you concerned? No. You've earned my trust, and nothing we did was improper. Just be careful. Revenge, even justified revenge, has a way of complicating things. I'll keep that in mind. I returned to my desk and opened my email. There, sitting at the top of my inbox, was a message from Gregory Hayes. Subject, you. The body of the email was a single line, I know what you did. I forwarded it to Marcus. His reply came within minutes, document everything. Don't respond directly. Tuesday brought rain and a text from Lauren, Gregory got fired. He said you had something to do with it. That's insane, right? I stared at the message for a long moment. Gregory must have found my contact information through the merger communications. All the key personnel had been introduced via email during the integration planning. I replied, I'm sorry to hear about Gregory's job. These things happen during mergers. Her response took longer, he's devastated. We have a baby coming. How could they do this? Me, I don't know the details. I just handle marketing integration. Which was technically true. I handled marketing integration. I also handled personnel recommendations, strategic planning, and anything else Christopher needed from his rising star. Wednesday, Daniel called. I answered. Did you get my brother-in-law fired? Hello to you too. I'm serious. Lauren is hysterical. Gregory is talking about lawyers. They're saying you tanked his position in the merger. I made a professional recommendation based on business needs. Because of what Lauren said in the bridal shop. Because Gregory's performance reviews were mediocre and his position was redundant in the merged structure. That's convenient. That's business. Daniel's voice rose. You're destroying my family over a stupid comment. No, Daniel. I'm doing my job. Lauren's comment just helped me see some things more clearly. Like what? Like the fact that you think her comment was stupid rather than cruel. Like the fact that you're more worried about your sister's feelings than mine. Like the fact that you never once asked how I felt about being humiliated in public. I apologized. You asked for a space to blow over. That's different. The line went quiet except for his breathing. Are we really done? He asked finally. I think we've been done for a while. We just didn't notice. Because of one fight? Because you let your sister call me an orphan like it was a character flaw and you couldn't even look at me. I hung up before he could respond. Thursday, I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. This is Gregory Hayes. Hello, Gregory. Don't hello Gregory me. You deliberately got me fired. I made a business recommendation to my CEO. Right before our companies merged? Right after my wife gave you advice about your wedding? That's not a coincidence. Your wife didn't give me advice. She insulted me in public. So you destroyed my career? Do you have any idea what you've done? I have a baby coming, a mortgage, you have a severance package that will cover 6 months while you find new employment. I made sure of that. How generous. His voice dripped sarcasm. You're proud of yourself, aren't you? Poor little foster kid shows the mean lady who's boss. Something in my chest tightened, but my voice stayed level. I'm not proud, Gregory. I'm just done being apologetic about surviving. My wife was trying to help you. Your wife was trying to humiliate me. There's a difference. We could sue you for this. Wrongful interference, emotional distress, you could try. But you'd lose. Everything I did was within my job responsibilities, and I have documentation for every decision. My attorney has already reviewed the situation. Go ahead and call a lawyer if you want. They'll tell you the same thing. He sputtered. You're cold. Daniel dodged a bullet. I hope he feels that way. Goodbye, Gregory. I blocked the number. Friday afternoon, I got a surprise visitor at the office. Daniel's mother, Patricia, not the bridal consultant, a different Patricia, appeared at reception asking to see me. I almost said no. Then curiosity got the better of me. She was a small woman, elegant in a way that spoke of old money and careful maintenance. I'd met her twice before, both times at awkward family dinners where conversation felt like a performance. Thank you for seeing me, she said as I led her to a conference room. Of course. We sat across from each other, a polished table between us. Patricia folded her hands. I'm going to be direct. Lauren called me, very upset. She says you had Gregory fired in retaliation for her comments about your background. That's her version. What's yours? I considered lying, spinning some corporate story. Instead, I told the truth. Your daughter humiliated me in public because I'm an orphan. She suggested I wasn't worthy of wearing white at my own wedding because I don't have parents. Your son said nothing in my defense. Afterward, in my professional capacity, I identified Gregory as redundant in a corporate merger. I didn't fabricate his mediocre performance reviews. I didn't create the business need for restructuring. I simply made sure the facts were clearly presented to decision makers. Patricia listened without interrupting. Did Lauren's comments influence your decision? She asked when I finished. Yes. That's honest. I found honesty simplifies things. Patricia was quiet for a long moment, her gaze steady. Lauren has always been entitled. We gave her too much, too easily. I know that. Her father and I have tried to address it, but some habits form young. I'm not sure why you're telling me this. Because I want you to understand something. Patricia leaned forward slightly. What Lauren said was unconscionable. If I had been there, I would have stopped her. What she did was cruel, and cruelty should have consequences. I blinked, genuinely surprised. However, Patricia continued, destroying Gregory's career affects more than just Lauren. There's a baby coming. Gregory, for all his faults, isn't the one who hurt you. He stood there and let his wife tear me apart. Yes. He did. And that makes him a coward and a poor husband. It doesn't make him deserving of financial ruin. He's not financially ruined. He has severance and experience. He'll find another job. Patricia smiled slightly. You're very controlled. I can see why you've succeeded. Thank you? It's not entirely a compliment. Control can become its own prison. She stood, gathering her purse. I don't expect you to change anything. What's done is done. But I hope you'll consider whether the satisfaction you feel right now is worth what it cost you. What did it cost me? My son. He's weak, I know. But he loved you in his way. His way wasn't enough. Patricia nodded slowly. Perhaps not. But be careful, dear. People who grow up fighting for everything sometimes forget that not everything needs to be a fight. She left. I sat in the conference room for a long time after, turning her words over in my mind. Saturday, I went back to the bridal boutique. Patricia, the consultant, not Daniel's mother, looked surprised to see me. Oh. I didn't expect. How are you? I'm well. I wanted to apologize for the scene last week. You have nothing to apologize for. That woman was appalling. Still. It disrupted your workday. Patricia waved this away. Do you want to look at dresses again? I kept the files from your appointment. Actually, I wanted to buy the white one. She paused. The one you were wearing when? That exact one. May I ask if you're still marrying the same man? No. I'm not marrying anyone right now. Patricia studied me, her expression knowing. But you want the dress anyway. I want the dress anyway. It's quite expensive to purchase a wedding dress you won't use. I'll use it eventually. Or maybe I'll frame it. Or maybe I'll just hang it in my closet as a reminder. Of what? That I'm allowed to wear white. Patricia smiled. Let me ring you up. The dress cost more than my first car. I paid in full and drove home with it hanging carefully in my back seat. The drive home took me past neighborhoods I used to know. Without planning to, I found myself turning down Maple Street, where the Hendersons had lived. My second foster home. Mrs. Henderson had been kind in a distant way, treating foster kids like temporary houseguests she was obligated to accommodate. I'd stayed there for 8 months before they moved out of state. I kept driving, the wedding dress visible in my rearview mirror like a ghost in white silk. 3 blocks later, I passed the library where I'd spent countless afternoons during high school, hiding from whatever foster home I was staying in that month. The building looked smaller than I remembered, the brick facade faded and worn. I'd done my homework at those tables, applied to colleges on those computers, dreamed about a future that seemed impossibly far away. At a stoplight, I pulled out my phone and scrolled through old contacts. Names I hadn't thought about in years. Stephanie, from my 4th foster home. Marcus, a caseworker who'd actually seemed to care. Jennifer, another foster kid I'd lost touch with after aging out. I wondered if any of them would understand what I'd just done. Buying a wedding dress for a wedding that would never happen, for a man I'd just broken up with, as some kind of statement about worthiness and belonging. Probably not. It was the kind of thing that only made sense if you'd grown up being told, subtly or overtly, that certain things weren't meant for you. The light turned green. I drove on, past the community college where I'd started my education, past the apartment complex where I'd lived with 3 roommates to afford rent, past all the markers of a life built from scratch. When I finally pulled into my apartment parking garage, I sat for a moment with the engine off, looking at that dress hanging in the back seat. It was more than fabric and thread. It was proof. Evidence. A receipt for a transaction that said, I was here. I mattered. I claimed space in the world. Even if nobody else understood it, I did. That evening, Natalie came over with wine and takeout. So, she said, settling onto my couch. Catch me up. I did, explaining everything that had happened since the bridal shop incident. When I finished, Natalie was quiet. Say it, I told her. Say what? Whatever you're thinking. She sighed. I'm thinking you won a battle, but I'm not sure what war you were fighting. What does that mean? It means Gregory lost his job, Daniel lost you, and Lauren got confirmation that you're exactly as vindictive as she probably told everyone you were. But what did you get? Justice. Is that what it feels like? I looked at the wine in my glass, watching the light refract through the dark liquid. Honestly? I don't know what it feels like. For what it's worth, I think Lauren deserved consequences. She was vicious. But maybe Daniel's mother had a point. Not about getting back together with Daniel, he's a spineless wonder. But about whether you're fighting out of strength or habit. I survived foster care by fighting? I know. And I'm grateful you did, because otherwise we wouldn't be friends. But you're not in foster care anymore. You don't have to be at war all the time. Even when people attack me? Even then. Sometimes you can just walk away. I did walk away. Then I came back with consequences. Natalie laughed. Fair enough. Monday morning brought the official announcement of the Morrison-Brennan merger completion. My promotion to VP was confirmed. I had a new office, a significant raise, and a team of 12 people reporting to me. Christopher called me in for a meeting. Congratulations, he said, gesturing to a chair. You've earned this. Thank you. I have a question, and I want an honest answer. All right. Are you satisfied? I thought about it. I'm successful. That's not what I asked. Why does it matter? Christopher leaned back, hands folded over his stomach. Because I've watched a lot of talented people burn out chasing satisfaction through success. They climb and climb, proving something to ghosts. Eventually they look around and realize they're alone at the top. Is this a lecture? It's a warning. You're good at what you do. Don't let anger make you better at the wrong things. Anger got me here. Maybe. But what happens when the anger runs out? I didn't have an answer. The question haunted me for days afterward. I found myself thinking about it during meetings, while reviewing reports, on the train home from work. What happens when the anger runs out? I'd been angry for so long, I wasn't sure I knew how to be anything else. Angry at the drunk driver who killed my parents. Angry at the foster system that treated children like inventory. Angry at the families who took me in and made me feel like an obligation instead of a person. Angry at everyone who'd ever underestimated me because I came from nowhere with no one. That anger had been fuel. It had pushed me through community college while working 40 hours a week. It had driven me to graduate with honors, to land internships, to claw my way into Morrison Digital when they wanted someone with an Ivy League pedigree instead of a state school degree. But Christopher was right. Anger was finite. Eventually, it would burn itself out, and then what would I have? I started paying attention to myself in a way I never had before. Noticing how I tensed up whenever someone mentioned family gatherings. How I automatically looked for the insult behind compliments. How I kept people at arm's length, even friends like Natalie who'd proven their loyalty over and over. One afternoon, I found myself in a coffee shop near the office, listening to a mother and daughter argue about college choices. The daughter wanted to study art. The mother wanted her to pursue something practical. You don't understand what I want. The daughter said, her voice rising with teenage conviction. I understand perfectly, the mother replied, tired but patient. I just want you to have options. To be secure. They kept going back and forth, neither one backing down, both clearly frustrated. But underneath the argument, I could see something I'd never had, the absolute certainty that this fight didn't threaten their relationship. They could disagree, could hurt each other's feelings, could be completely wrong about each other's motivations, and it wouldn't matter. Tomorrow they'd still be mother and daughter. I left before they finished, my coffee half drunk, my chest tight with an emotion I couldn't quite name. Later, I realized it was grief. Not fresh grief. I'd processed my parents' deaths years ago in mandatory therapy sessions. This was something different. Grief for all the ordinary arguments I'd never have. For the family dynamics I'd never navigate. For the luxury of taking relationships for granted because they were guaranteed by blood. Lauren had that luxury. She could be cruel to me and still go home to her husband, her baby, her parents who would always take her side. Daniel had it too, the safety net of people who'd love him no matter what choices he made. I had a severance package and a wedding dress and a VP title earned through calculated decisions. 3 weeks later, I ran into Lauren at a grocery store. We saw each other from opposite ends of an aisle. For a moment, we just stared. Then she turned and walked away. I continued shopping. A month after that, I heard through mutual acquaintances that Gregory had found a new job at a smaller firm. The pay was less, but he was employed. Their baby, the girl, was born healthy. Daniel sent me a text. I heard about your promotion. Congratulations. I replied, thank you. He wrote back, do you think we could ever be friends? I thought about it for a long time before responding, maybe someday. Not today. 6 months passed. Morrison Digital continued growing. My team successfully integrated the Brennan acquisition, and we were already eyeing new targets. I worked long hours, traveled frequently, built an impressive reputation. I dated occasionally. Nothing serious. Most men seemed either intimidated by my success or threatened by my independence. I told myself I didn't care. The wedding dress hung in my closet, still in its protective bag. One evening, alone in my apartment, I took it out and tried it on again. It fit perfectly, just as it had in the boutique. The same beautiful ivory silk, the same elegant lines. In the mirror, I looked exactly how I'd imagined a bride should look. Except there was no wedding. No groom. No family to fuss over buttons and veils. Just me in a dress and a reflection. I thought about Lauren's words, orphans don't wear white. I thought about Patricia's warning, control can become its own prison. I thought about Natalie's question, what did you get? Standing there in that expensive, unused wedding dress, I finally understood the answer. I got even. I got revenge. I got professional success. But I didn't get free. The anger that had driven me for so long was still there, coiled in my chest like a snake. It had helped me survive foster care, pushed me through college, propelled me up the corporate ladder. It had given me the strength to fight back when Lauren tried to humiliate me. But what was I fighting for now? I looked at my reflection, successful, independent, alone, and asked myself the hardest question, if I wasn't fighting, who would I be? The dress whispered against my skin as I moved. Ivory silk. Traditionally for brides from intact families, Lauren had said. She was wrong. White was for anyone strong enough to wear it. For anyone brave enough to stand in front of the world and say, I'm here. I matter. I deserve to celebrate myself. I took a photo of myself in the mirror, wedding dress and all, and posted it to my private social media with a simple caption, to everyone who ever told me what I deserved, thank you for the motivation. Within an hour, dozens of comments appeared. Friends from college. Colleagues. Old foster siblings I'd reconnected with over the years. Even Natalie, you're glowing. Also, you're ridiculous. Also, I love you. One comment stood out, from a woman named Jessica who'd been in the same foster home as me 20 years ago, you always were the one who refused to break. Glad to see that hasn't changed. I realized something then, staring at those comments. I hadn't just survived foster care. I'd built a whole life. I had friends who loved me, colleagues who respected me, and a career I'd earned through talent and determination. Lauren's words had hurt because somewhere deep down, I believed them. Not about the white dress, that was just cruelty. But about belonging. About deserving good things. About being enough without a traditional family behind me. She touched an old wound, and I'd responded the only way I knew how, by fighting back. But maybe I didn't need to keep fighting. Maybe I'd already won just by surviving, by succeeding, by becoming someone who could stand in a wedding dress alone and feel beautiful. I took off the dress carefully and hung it back in the closet. Then I sat down at my computer and wrote an email. To Christopher Wells. Subject, Personnel Recommendation. Christopher, I want to discuss the possibility of offering consulting opportunities to talented individuals currently between positions. I've identified someone with strong experience in corporate integration who might benefit from project-based work while he transitions to his new role. His name is Gregory Hayes. I'm not suggesting we rehire him permanently, but a few consulting projects could benefit both parties. Let me know if you're interested in discussing this further. Best, my name. I hit send before I could reconsider. Christopher's reply came the next morning. Interesting timing. Let's talk. I didn't tell Gregory. I didn't tell Lauren. I didn't tell Daniel. This wasn't about them anymore. 2 weeks later, Gregory got a call about a lucrative consulting contract. He didn't know where it came from. I preferred it that way. Natalie asked me about it when we met for dinner. Why did you help him? I didn't help him. I identified a business opportunity that happened to benefit someone I previously hurt. That's semantics. Maybe. Are you looking for redemption? I considered the question while cutting my steak. No. I'm looking for balance. What's the difference? Redemption is about fixing the past. Balance is about choosing the future. Natalie raised her wine glass. To balance, then. To balance. A year after the bridal shop incident, I was walking through the city when I saw her. Lauren, pushing a stroller, looking tired in the way all new mothers look tired. We made eye contact. For a second, I thought she might say something. Instead, she nodded slightly and kept walking. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't reconciliation. But it was acknowledgement. Of history, of consequences, of two women who'd hurt each other and survived it. That was enough. I never did get married. The dress stayed in my closet for 2 more years after that encounter before I finally donated it to a charity that provided free wedding dresses to foster youth aging out of the system. The note I included was simple: orphans absolutely wear white. Wear it proudly. I heard later that a young woman named Maria wore it at her courthouse wedding. She sent a photo, beaming smile, white dress, no family in sight. Just her and her partner and a future they were building together. She looked beautiful. She looked happy. She looked free. Sometimes people ask if I regret what I did to Gregory. The honest answer is complicated. I regret the anger that drove me. I regret that Daniel turned out to be someone who valued peace over protection. I regret that Lauren and I never found a way to understand each other. But I don't regret defending myself. I don't regret showing that foster kids grow up to be people with power. I don't regret proving that underestimating someone because of their background is a mistake. And I definitely don't regret that wedding dress. Morrison Digital is now Morrison Global. I'm an executive VP. My team has grown to 43 people. I mentor young professionals, especially those from difficult backgrounds. Last month, I spoke at a conference for former foster youth. Someone asked how I handled people who looked down on me for my background. I smiled. I remind myself that I survived things they can't imagine. Then I show them exactly what survival looks like when it grows up. The room erupted in applause. Later, a young woman approached me. She was maybe 22, nervous, holding a notepad covered in scribbled notes. "Thank you for your speech," she said. "I aged out last year. I'm trying to make it through business school. Some days I feel like I don't belong anywhere." I looked at her, really looked, and saw myself 15 years earlier. "You belong everywhere you choose to be," I told her. "Don't let anyone, including yourself, tell you differently." Even when people say things about where I came from? Especially then. She nodded, eyes bright with unshed tears. "Did you ever stop being angry?" It was the question I'd been asking myself for years. "No," I admitted. "But I learned to use it better. Anger can be fuel or it can be fire. The trick is knowing which one you need." She smiled. "Thank you." Watching her walk away, I thought about Lauren, about Daniel, about everyone who'd ever underestimated me because I grew up without a family. They'd all taught me something valuable. The world would constantly tell me what I deserved, what I could have, what was appropriate for someone like me. My job was to smile and prove them wrong. Not for revenge. Not anymore. For myself. And maybe, just maybe, for every other orphan who needed to know that white dresses, corner offices, and happy endings weren't reserved for people with perfect families. They were for survivors. They were for fighters. They were for anyone brave enough to claim them.